Off, that means we're there. Almost.
Live from Austin, Texas, this is the Plutopia News Network Happy Hour. Our guest this time is Cid Bullens. The not ready for cable news players are all here. Susie Sheeler, John Lebkowski, Scoop Sweeney, and our soon-to-be foreign correspondent, Maggie Duvall.
We're joined tonight by Cid Bullens, a two-time Grammy nominee. Cid's work has taken him from singing backup on tour with Elton John, squee, and lead vocals on the Grease movie soundtrack from my childhood, to creating 9 critically acclaimed solo albums with the help of friends including Bonnie Raitt, Lucinda Williams, Steve Earle, Bryan Adams, Emmylou Harris, Delbert McClinton, Rodney, Crowell, and Sir Elton himself. In 2011, Cid made the difficult and daunting decision to transition from Cindy to Cidny. He has written and has been performing his amazing one-person show, theatrical show, which I have seen and love, Somewhere Between, Not an Ordinary Life, all over the US, and an award-winning documentary short about his life called The Gender Line, which is now screening at major film festivals around the world. He also speaks on gender, LGBTQ, and culture and music issues in colleges and universities, along with various organizations around the world. He's going to join us tonight to talk about all sorts of things, but I want to kick it off with talking about his new album, Walkin' Through This World. So Cid, welcome. Hello.
Thank you.
And tell us how long you've been working on this album and what was the inspiration or inspirations for it?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. I love Austin. I haven't been there in a couple of years and was supposed to be down there, I think, with somebody who's here. But anyway, it didn't happen. COVID
nixed that house concert, yeah.
But anyway, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here. Walking Through This World is my first album as Cidny. I have, as Maggie said, a bunch of albums as Cidny through the last 40 years. And but I did decide to transition, and that's a whole story in itself. But that was back in 2011, but in 2000, I did my show in 2016 through 18, and somewhere in there I knew that I had to start writing some songs for a new album as Cidny. And I recorded it last year in Nashville, and with my good friend Ray Kennedy, who as we speak, you know, has produced Lucinda's last album and Rodney Crowell's last album, Steve Earle's last album, and continues to work with those guys all the time. He co-produced 2 of my past albums as well, and is a good friend and is a genius. And we recorded it last year, and it was going to come out earlier this year, but the pandemic happened, and I thought, well, what am I going to do? So anyway, it came out in August, and the album is called Walkin' Through This World, and I didn't really know what the title was going to be until really right before I released it. It is a song on the album, and the album is inspired by my transition. The only song on there that's really about the transition itself or about being transgender is called The Gender Line, which is a line in my one-person show that became the title of the documentary, which then after that I wrote a song called The Gender Line. And and it's a rock and roll record. It's a record. It harkens back to my early days as a rock and roller, but also, you know, is quite relevant to today, and is I think great music, and also has a little bit of cultural reference to it. So.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, one of the things I wanted to start out with is, we were talking about this a little bit before the show started, is that when I've described you to people, I describe you as someone who maybe, if you think this way, came into this life choosing to have as many possible life experiences as possible. You're such a multidimensional person. And just with you discussing this album, I get this sense that it's taking maybe a more multidimensional approach for the first time, you know, doing it as Cid. And I want to kind of go into the gender line and the show in a minute, but would you give us one of the songs from the album to start out?
Sure.
So we get a sense of it.
Sure. I will play the gender line, but I'm going to play a different song right now.
Yeah.
When I first started transitioning, I did not feel like writing at all. Mm-hmm. I was living in Maine. I was single, living in Maine, and really I was doing some work with my cohorts, the refugees, Wendy, Waldman, and Deborah, Holland, but I really wasn't comfortable in myself yet. I mean, there is a transition within the transition where you're not yet. I was no longer Cindy, but I wasn't yet Cidny. Mm-hmm. And so I really wasn't writing a lot of songs, but I wrote 2 songs in the beginning of my transition. And this is one, and they're both on the album, but I'm going to play this one because about 1.5 years after starting my transition, I really profoundly felt that I was no longer Cindy, but I didn't know who Cidny was.
Wow.
And it was frightening. It was frightening, and I felt ungrounded, and you know, I didn't exactly. And plus, you're going through all this stuff, and you're telling people, and you're transitioning within society, and not only did I have my family and my friends and stuff, but being a public figure, I was also doing it out loud, if you will.
Yes.
And so it's a daunting, as I say, I think that's the best word I could come up with, because it is a daunting proposition. But anyway, this song is on the album, and it's called Purgatory Road. Felt the hot black tar beneath my shifting feet. I heard the rumble of the fire before I felt the heat. Like a moth to a flame, I felt my wings explode. Now I find myself stumbling down Purgatory Road. Got a hole in my pocket, and it's driving me mad. I'm losing every little bit of endless inside. I'm in a whole lot of trouble. It's a fact I know, 'cause I can't see what's coming down Purgatory Road. Did I leave myself stranded? Did I get myself lost? There's no going back over all those lines I've crossed. There's nothing I can do now except carry my own load and just keep on walking down Purgatory Road. Down Purgatory Road. I heard somebody whisper. I heard somebody shout. There's nothing you want down there, and there's no way out. But who's rushing? And the wise man knows you best not get caught down Purgatory Road. Down Purgatory Road. Down Purgatory Road.
Hey, that was great.
Right on.
That was fantastic.
Awesome.
Very nice.
Wow.
Thank you.
Sid, you've been a wife and now you're a husband, and your wife is the woman who helped you shape your show, Somewhere Between. What drew you to go into this whole process? When did it happen, and what inspired you to reach out to Tanya and start that rolling?
Yes, it's amazing, isn't it?
I love it.
You know, life has many twists and turns, and if you live long enough, you know it has many. And yes, as I, referring to Purgatory Road, where I was then, and then in 2014, I hid away for 2000. From 2012 to 2014, I hid. I hid up in Maine. I had my grandchildren. I had my daughter there.
Mm-hmm.
I got a job in the LL Bean warehouse, picking flannel shirts and socks off the shelves.
Yeah.
And because I needed to just get small and get into myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a blessing, actually. And then I knew that I had wanted to write a one-person show after the death of my daughter, or not right after, but at some years after, and about that. And it didn't come. It didn't happen. I wrote an album, and I went on to do that. And other things came from it. But so I knew there was a one-person show in me somewhere that I wanted to express. But when I started transitioning and getting into my transition, I realized I now had the arc of the story.
Mm.
I had the young rock and roller in Los Angeles on the road with Elton and singing on the Grease movie soundtrack and singing with famous people and meeting famous people and having the rock and roll life, flying around in private jets and so on. I had the young, and then I got married and had kids and became a Connecticut housewife. Not really, but I lived in Connecticut and I was a wife and a mother.
Yeah.
I still look like I look now without the mustache.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I had 2 kids, and then Jessie died in 1996, which changed my whole life, and I won't go into that right this second. I'll answer your question, and that was the next decade of my life, and in 2014, I thought, okay, I've got the early life, I've got the marriage and having children, and then Jessie's death and the aftermath, and now I have the becoming who I really felt I've always been. But I had so much material, as we've talked about. I had so much of a life that I know how to write. I can write. But I did not know how to put it together. So I went looking on the internet for, I didn't know what I was looking for, one person show, coaches, directors, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I really wasn't in the world of story coaching and, all that stuff. So I don't know. And Tanya Taylor Rubenstein's website came up, her name came up. And I think it was the first one on there. And I went into the website and I saw who she was, and she lived in Santa Fe, and that was a big perk because I love Santa Fe.
Okay, there you go. Yeah.
Although we don't live there now, as you know, but
it's in Nashville. Yes.
So I kept it in the back of my mind, and I didn't do anything. And about a month later, you know how things just gnaw at you, and you finally got to do something. And I said, if I don't do this, it wasn't about Tanya, it was about getting started with a one-person show. And I call it a one-person show because it's about Cindy and it's about Cidny too. So it's not a one-man show. It's not a one-woman show. It's a it's a one-person show.
Somewhere between, yes.
Somewhere between. And so finally, I reached out to her and I gave her the little synopsis. It was like the bio you read, only it was of that time.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I sang with the elevator pitches. I sang with Elton John, I'm Grammy nominated, sang with Elton John, lost a child, transitioned from female to male. Oh, really? Okay.
She's probably looking at it like, okay.
Yeah. So I gave her the elevator pitch on her, and within, I don't know, several hours, I heard from her. And we talked on the phone, and that was in late December of 14. So it might have been 13, late December of 13, early January 14. We made we made a date for me to go out to New Mexico at the end of April of 14, and I went. And because what she promised was, she doesn't do this anymore, but what she was doing. Well, she makes promises, but back then it's a 4-day boot camp to write your solo show, and by the end of the 4th day, you will have an outline for your show. And I thought, that's what I need. I didn't want somebody to write it for me. I knew I could write it. I just needed. So anyway, I went out in April of 14, and we did the boot camp. And then we followed up on Skype then, because there was no Zoom, and we followed up on Skype for the next year or so. And to make it the long story short, when I was about to do my first reading, because I wrote it over the next year, and with check-ins with her about, now you don't need that, you don't need that, or how about emphasizing
too much,
more,
yeah.
all that, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then she was bringing her daughter, Chloe, who's now my stepdaughter, who had been accepted into the BU, Boston University Theater Department. I lived in Portland, Maine. So I was doing my first reading ever on August 31st of 2015. And she was dropping Chloe off in Boston. So I said, come on up. And there's an in-between story in here, which I won't go into, but she came up, which she doesn't do for all of her clients. And that weekend was kind of the beginning of our exploring another kind of relationship, and I'm the one that said, was like, I don't know. I've been single for 10 years. I'm an old Trans fan. I don't know. But we married almost 3 years ago, January 12th of 18. And but anyway, that was the beginning of our journey together. And boy, I'll tell you, what a journey.
Sid, if I can ask, the music business has a spotty record for accepting change and diversity. Were there some responses when you changed that surprised you, either positive or negative?
Good question.
Well, it's, let's put it this way. My friends in the music business, there's not a one of them that I know of who has done anything but embrace me. My friends here in Nashville, they worked with me, they recorded with me, they asked me to do, well, the pandemic is here now, so everything's shut down. But they've sung with me, we've done gigs together. I mean, everybody in the music business who are my peers have embraced me. This is conjecture on my part, what I'm about to say, because I can't prove it unless somebody tells me. But when I was going to find and I've had all kinds of record deals. I've had major record deals with major, I've had independent, I've had solo, I've had all kinds of record deals in my 40 years. But when I went to find distribution for this record, there was none to be found.
Wow.
And it's a great record. And I say that, I know it's me, but when you know who Ray Kennedy is, and he's a sound magician, and I do know that I'm a good songwriter, and I have a track record, and the record is just ear candy, the whole thing. And I was surprised by that in a way, because what I feel is that on the face of it, I'm accepted, but I don't think record companies or the business of music wants to have another story to tell. This is my opinion, mind you, I have no proof, that and I say they in the big, whatever, just making a sweeping statement here. They don't want to tell the story behind the record. They want to put out a record, and they want it to make money or not. They want you to do whatever you're going to do or not. But there's something behind this album. There's a story to tell, which personally I think makes it all that much more compelling. and gives it more press. I do have a wonderful press agent, Carrie Baker, who did a fabulous job. I put this out myself, paid for everything, and still doing it, because I decided it, and Carrie urged me to, and Tanya urged me to, and other people urged me to, just put it out there, regardless of distribution. But I feel, Scoop, that whether or not I don't think it's a moral issue. I don't think it's in the music business. I think it's just one more task that they didn't want to have to take on, or one more subject that they didn't want to have to take on. And if that's because it's too controversial, or they don't want to be seen as the record company who's putting out the transgender guy's album, I don't know.
Well,
But I'll
no,
tell you,
Isn't-
I have been
isn't it-
embraced by my peers in the music.
Isn't it a really different record industry now, though? I mean, it seems like they're kind of just hanging on by a thread, now that streaming is sort of the thing, and the acts that they're able to really sell are, I don't know, mostly hip hop.
Because exactly, and I'm not 25 anymore, and that's another thing too. I mean, no doubt about it. So that, coupled with, but a lot of my peers who are my age, and when I say peers, I know some of them are more well known than I am, but some of my peers who are about equal to me in terms of, people knowing who we are and fan base and, reach out, the reach that we have, are similar, and they find those deals, not everybody, but people who have done as much as I have. And, but yes, the record company is totally different now. And I've had to learn about that, because don't forget, I haven't had a record out in 10 years before.
Right.
And
it used to be that those records would be, the songs would be put in order specifically because it told a story. The whole idea of an album was the order of the songs, and now you just get one song. It's like just a series of one-hit wonders that go nowhere. I like a lot of the singles, but at the same time, it's just not the same. I don't care for it as much.
well,
People shuffle a lot.
Yeah, that was one of my demands of myself. And, when Ray and I were talking, because when Ray Kennedy and I were talking beforehand, he said, it's really a world of singles now. And I said, well, that's fine, well and good. And sure, I'll put out a couple singles, but this is an album. It's a story, and it's similar to Somewhere Between Heaven and Earth, not to be confused with Somewhere Between Not an Ordinary Life, which was my show. The album that I wrote in the first 2 years after my daughter's death was called Somewhere Between Heaven and Earth, was my biggest album ever.
It's incredible.
Ironically, the biggest commercial thing, because of Danny Goldberg, who did dare to put out an album that was about somebody's death of a child, Danny Goldberg, and on Artemis Records, who Steve Earle was on as well. So he did put that out, and it became my biggest commercial success. But that was also an album, even though that was 1999, when they were still making albums and having a story told. But this time, Susie, I did say, no matter what happens, because I don't care, I mean, in the big picture, I'm not out there. I mean, do I want to make money? Do I want to have some recognition? Yeah, I'd be lying if I said I didn't. I mean, I'm a musician. I'm a performer. I'm a songwriter. We want to get our art out there. But it was important to me to have an album of songs that told a story.
Right on.
And part of the reason has nothing to do with the music business. If one young or old transgender person hears my album and says, I can do that, or, oh, that's me, or, oh, let me find out about that. I don't know what their questions are.
Yeah.
And I'll do the gender line, the song next.
Yeah.
And if it's helpful, if it's of service in any way, shape, or form, then I've done my job.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm too old to be famous anymore. I mean, to have that need or want, you know.
The old meaning of it, right? You know,
the old meaning of it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm totally grateful to be here and to be talking and to be reaching new people. And of course I want to do that. But so anyway, getting back to your point, Susie, it was very important for me to put on an album. And not just singles. From here on in, yeah, if I write a single, I might put out a single. If I write another song, I might put out a single. But this album had to be a package. It had to be 10 songs that fit together, and they're not all the same genre. I mean, there's some rock and there's some, you know, one very acoustic, just me and the guitar at the end, and there's some, you know, there's a spoken word song. Walking Through This World is kind of a spoken word song. It is a spoken word song. So anyway, and it's a great point, you know.
I have another question. Were you at all nervous about your voice changing?
Totally. And it's a question I get asked about a lot. And it's when I first started taking testosterone, which was September 1st, 2011, after going to therapy, back then you had to go through therapy and you had to go get a doctor's note. You had to do the whole thing, which is okay. I mean, that's fine. I did that. But when I first, I purposely, and this is kind of technical, but I purposely took a very low dose for about 2 years or a year and a half or 2 years. I can't remember exactly. Like a quarter of, I still take less than like a 25-year-old would, because, you know, I don't have to. I don't have that, you know. But because I was afraid that if I took the recommended amount to transition, that my voice would change too rapidly, because what happens is your vocal cords thicken. Okay. And they would change so rapidly that I wouldn't be able to sing. And I did some research on this. There wasn't a heck of a lot to look at, but it was a tiny bit. So I decided that I almost didn't go on testosterone at all for a while until I was, you know, but anyway, I did. And I took a very low dose, and it really was fine for about a year. And then I had that kind of emotional purgatory road thing after about a year or so. And so I backed off, and it was like kind of the perfect timing to back off from singing, because I was still on tour the first year of my transition, and half the people were, you know, I had changed my name, and half the people were calling me Cindy, and half were calling me Cidny.
Wow.
The refugees, Wendy, Waldman, and Deborah Holland, and I would walk into a radio station, and they go, "Well, we have 3 lovely ladies here," and it's not so much that I expected people to know, but it was just uncomfortable for me.
Surreal.
Being
surreal. So I
misgendered is hardcore. Honestly.
So I pulled back, and luckily within that pullback section of the 2 year and a half that I pulled back, I only had to do some charity stuff for friends, but I couldn't find the notes.
Wow.
I mean, nobody knew but me, but I was like changing the keys and, you know, which key and what guitar and what this and what that. And as a singer, you know that you don't think, you just, the note comes out when you decide that that's the note you're going to sing. Well, that wasn't happening to me. And it was very disconcerting.
Yeah.
And that lasted for about a year and a half. And then it finally started settling. I think it's still doing it now, but the upshot is doing this album, although I'd done demos and I played a few little things live and stuff, was the first time I really got into the studio and heard my own voice the way it is now.
Right on.
And I had to, and Ray also was a part of this. I didn't know what was I didn't know how to play with my own voice. I didn't know, I hadn't had that much experience with this new voice.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back and you listen to the Grease movie soundtrack,
mm-hmm.
where I sang, now mind you, it was a made up voice. It was a little girl voice that was wrong. When I sang Raining on Prom Night, Freddie, My Love, you know, and you listen to my voice on my new album, Walking Through This World, it's not, I mean, there's a little bit of timbre, you know, recognition, but certainly not the same. And so it took me, I had to do a few takes, not on every song, but there were a few songs when I thought, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with my voice here.
Yeah.
So I had to play around a little bit for my voice to fit the new songs that I had written. And, but the upshot is I always hated my voice. Never, I started liking it the older I got, because the older you get, the more you're sitting in it anyway.
Yeah.
And so I didn't hate my voice on Somewhere Between Heaven and Earth or anything beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
But now I have so much more fun. Oh my God, I'm cracking and growling and I'm off key here and I'm laughing.
Well, if you see any of Cid's old performances, like just as the rocking out, you're
American Bandstand.
Yeah, you were grabbing that growling, but it's like now you can really go into it.
Yeah, now it's a different thing. But I love that I can play now, and I feel so much, and it's all a function, Susie, of feeling more within myself.
Absolutely. No,
in my body, in my mind, in my emotion. There's no pretense anymore.
Yeah.
I don't have to pretend to be a female singer.
Yeah. Right. And it's just, it's really interesting, because I'm glad you asked that question, Susie, because I was just seeing one of my favorite other musicians right now who blows my mind is Charlotte McCaslin in a group called Roselet Bone. Check them out. Charlotte has the sound that comes from some other age and time. It's very dark Americana. It's amazing. Anyway, she transitioned, I think a couple of years ago, and she posted a very powerful bit the other day about having, the difficulty of, she's taking courses to help modulate the tone of her female voice. But she said, she asked her family and friends to forgive her, because she said, sometimes I'm going to drop into another register and go over here. And I was just like, oh yeah, duh. The things we don't think about. Right. And just it's just profoundly moving, the fact that, like, being yourself, this is who I am. And that you created this album to, this is something my daughter and I talk about a lot. This is something very powerful for her. And she's very angry at certain famous writers right now, a certain famous writer. Anyway, would you play us the gender line?
I will.
That would be great.
I will. And yeah, it is the first thing people started saying to me, just on that note, after I started really kind of getting into myself, is how much freer I was.
Oh, wow.
People I didn't even know. I mean, but people would tell me, people who knew me for a long time, that they could feel this freedom and happiness and just more joy coming out of me. Mm-hmm. Now that doesn't mean I don't go into my old, crappy places, because I do, but
you can be human.
Anyway,
that's right.
This is the song, The Gender Line. which I'll just say very briefly, the director who directed the Genderline movie.
And I'd like to know a little more about that. Could you just quickly tell us what that is?
Sure. Well, I was filmed for a feature film called Invisible about gay women in Southern music. After the director and the producer saw my show in Nashville, and they asked me if I'd be a part of it because I wasn't gay, so to speak, but I was a woman in Nashville who was friends with all these people they interviewed in the early 90s and mid 90s, in the 90s, writing songs in Nashville. So I said yes, and so they came up to Maine a few months later and filmed me. And when I was, so two things. When I was up in Maine filming, the director and I were in a car after one of the shoots of me in Maine, and for this film called Invisible, which has yet to come out because it got delayed during the pandemic. It's been accepted into a bunch of film festivals, but you know, they're waiting. Anyway, and so the director, TJ Parcell, said to me, you know, you have to write a song called The Genderline. Now, this is before there was ever a film or anything, and I'll tell you how that, about me. And I looked at him, and you know, any songwriter hates it when somebody says, you know, you should write a song about, and you're like, uh-huh. But because it is a line from my show. My daughter says, Mom, here's the gender line. You've always been on just this side. Now you're moving over to just the other side, the male side of the gender line. So, and she had said that to me when we went after one of our therapy sessions, which she was a part of, when I was deciding to transition. And so TJ said, you have to write a song about the gender line. And I thought, and I said to him, well, I didn't say to him, I just took it in. But I thought to myself, there's no frigging way. First of all, I don't write songs about particular subjects, and I don't write social commentary. I mean, that's just not what I do. I write about my life, whether it's a feeling or a situation or a circumstance. You know, no frills, no preaching, no, oh, this is happening in the world. No. But I had to drive from Maine to New Mexico after that shoot. And in the middle of, and because the director said it to me, he said, you know, you really have to write a song called The Genderline. And I thought, okay, here's the director of this movie saying I should need to write a song. Maybe I should. But I didn't see how I was going to do it. And in the middle of the country somewhere, driving cross country, which I do did quite a bit, I looked, as I recall, I looked in the rearview mirror for the thousandth time that day. And the words came to me, and I was thinking about writing the song and how I was going to do it. And the words came, if you were me, what would you do? You look in the mirror and it's not really you.
Excellent.
And I grabbed a napkin or the pad of paper or whatever, because I always have something to write on, and a pen, and I started writing it down, and the words came to me. And so that's that part of where the gender line came to. Now that was in September of 18.
That sounds about right.
In May of 19, TJ Parcell, the director of Invisible, calls me up and he says, I'm just calling to tell you that your section in the film was so powerful, we took it out and made a 13-minute documentary short about your life, and we're calling it The Genderline.
Wow.
And
that's cool.
They did. It's been in a lot of film festivals. It's won some best of awards for best documentary short. It is how TJ put my life into 13 minutes.
What? Yeah.
Brilliant. It's brilliantly done. And I'm not saying that because it's about me. It's just, and the tenderness and the sensitivity. It go, we're up at Jessie's grave up in North Haven, Maine, on an island. Tanya's in it. My grandchildren are in it. Well, all but one, the one that came afterwards. But three of the now four are in it, and my daughter's in it. And just the way he did, he goes through the whole thing. It's like a short 13-minute version of my show.
Okay.
So that's how the gender line and the movie came to be. So, if you were me, what would you do? You look in the mirror and it's not really you. You fumble around for something to wear. You feel invisible, you're not really there. Would you think you were crazy and out of your mind? You're not in your body, living a lie. There's a train in the station, there's a car in the drive. They can't take me over the gender line. No, they won't take me over the gender line. Knew about a young man, my little town, kept to himself and didn't run with the crowd. Wicked secrets locked up in his head, vicious monster hiding under his bed. There was no reason in anyone's mind. What would possess him to take his own life? There's a train in the station, planes lined up to fly. They couldn't take him over the gender line. They couldn't take her over the gender line. Are you a boy or are you a girl? It's an easy answer in a binary world. There's a boat in the harbor, planes lined up to fly. They won't take you over the gender line. No, they can't take you over the gender line. I had to crawl over the gender line. Are you a boy or are you a girl?
Wow. Thank you. That's amazing.
That's pretty intense.
Thank
Very
you.
nice.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. But
Hey, so
true.
you know, a lot of my trans friends are very sensitive about their dead name. And it doesn't seem like you're ever going to be able to divorce yourself from yours. How do you feel about that? Are you fine? Just whatever?
It's fine. I mean,
Yeah.
I was Cindy Bullens for 60 years,
Yeah.
it's, and I have a career and I have as Cindy Bullens and I had 2 children. I'm still my daughter's mother.
Mhm.
I'm my grandchildren's grandmother. I'm
Mhm.
not their grandfather, even though the 2 younger boys think I am. I mean, I'm not called grandpa, I'm called Rara, but my 2 older granddaughters know. And but my daughter asked me way back in the beginning, and I say it in one of my songs. There's a funny song. I try to have a sense of humor about all this. And there's a song on the album called Call Me by My Name.
Yes.
And there's a line in there that says, where my daughter says, "What do I call you, Ma?" And I said, "Call me by my name," because she said, what do I call you?
Yeah. Well, that's another thing.
And I said, "Call me Mom."
Mhm.
Okay. Now see.
Because I'm your mother. Now, she's gone through she has her own story about this, and she was very supportive and everything. But then when I started to really transition, she had feelings about it. She was losing her
Yeah.
mother, and she still has, and we've talked about it, and it was a very hard time for her in that purgatory road time,
Right.
and when we're out, and if it's a situation where not that it's dangerous, but where we don't want to draw attention to ourselves, she'll call me Cid. But if we're in Macy's and we're shopping with the grandchildren, she's, "Mom, look at this over here," people,
Yeah.
but
And
Cindy,
that's sort of outside the norm, I find. The way you're describing yourself. That is not what I have found in the trans community, and I'm pretty involved in the queer community. I think that's outside the norm. I love it, actually. I just think it's great. I really do.
I can't deny who I've been. One of the proudest moments of my life, in fact, probably there are 2 defining moments in my life, and now maybe there are 3, but there are 2. One was the birth of my first daughter, and one was the death of my second daughter.
Mhm.
At least up till now. I really haven't talked about the defining moments in my life lately, but maybe just another 1 or 2 after that. But that's the way I used to say it, because my children, if I hadn't been a woman, I would not have born my children.
Mhm.
And I loved being pregnant. Now, I looked in the mirror and laughed at myself because I never felt like a woman, not for 1 second of my life, even pregnant.
That's
Even
awesome.
9 months pregnant. I knew I was carrying a baby. And believe me, I knew I was birthing one with natural childbirth both times. But I loved it. I loved breastfeeding. And to me, not to get too personal, but that was the only function my breasts had as feeling like a man my whole life.
Yeah, of course.
But I love my children. I love that I had those babies, even with Jessie's death, at 11 years old. So that's my identity is not wrapped up in any one thing. And that's
wonderful.
I
It
am
really
a human
is.
being who happens to be a transgender person. Is it important? Yeah, but absolutely. I mean, I made the decision late in life to transition and had to go through everything that all trans people have to go through. It's not easy to change genders. It's not an easy place to be and to have to go through. And this is my story. This is my being. And I don't begrudge anybody I talk to obviously a lot of trans people, and young ones and older ones and ones in between. And we all have our own story, just like every bereaved parent who I've performed for thousands and thousands of bereaved parents.
Mm-hmm.
We all have the same bottom line, but we all have different stories.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so for me, my identity is not wrapped up in any one thing. I don't know why. I can't say that it was a decision to not deny my past name or to accept my past. It just, that's me. I've always been just me, and I was Cindy, and now I'm Cid.
Mm-hmm.
And
That seems to be the thing that people strive to be in our community. But for some reason, we fracture ourselves, and because of things like this, right? Having to also stand out and be different. You can't be unified if you're fractured like that. And I just think that's so great that you're just like, yeah, this is just who I am, and this is who I was, and call me what you want.
Yeah, well, I mean, I am like earlier today, or maybe it was yesterday. I think it was yesterday. My sister, I have siblings, and one of my sisters calls me up, and she's telling me about one of my other sisters who's in the hospital right at the moment, and she's talking about me to my other. She's talking to me about me to my other sister, and she said, and I told her, well, she did that, and she did that, and I said, Debbie, not to out my sister. I said, Debbie, he. And she was being emotional anyway, and she started crying. And I was like, what are you crying for?
Yeah.
I said, and it's not that I do care. And my siblings call me Cindy. They really do try, except my brother, and we don't talk about him. But, my brother is who he is. But they do try, and they do call me Cid. They do call me Cid. But when they get excited, or when something's wrong, or somebody's panicking, and somebody's in the hospital, and somebody's, this is happening, and this is happening, and they're talking, it's Cindy, and it's she. And actually, Cindy doesn't bother me as much as the she does. It's been 9 years, and it's like. Yeah. But you know what? I have trouble with myself. When how you yell at yourself and you say your own name?
Yeah, I do.
You're like, really? You're going to do that? I still say Cindy sometimes.
I love that.
So if I do it, I can't begrudge anybody else.
Right. Well, we're at our 2-minute mark. Yeah. I wanted to cover so much more. I wanted to talk about Jessie. I'm hoping that we can get you to come back, because I want to cover a whole bunch of other stuff down the road. Would you take us out with one more song?
Sure.
That would be great.
I don't think it's within the 2 minutes, but it's not that long. This is a song called, for all of us, called Healing the Break. I'm holding my own. I'm doing all right. I'm finding my way through this curious life. I don't understand, not even a clue. But some days I think I do. I felt this before when the sun comes up, lending its light to the day. When breathing comes easy and worry fades away. It's all about healing the break. It's all about healing the break. I forgot the second verse. I forgot the second verse. That's not good. Never done that. Forgot the second verse, so you'll have to just, I'll do the chorus. And it's good too.
Well, now, you know, this is on the album, right? We have to get the album.
It's on the album. All right. I'll let you go out with this. Just a little.
Perfect.
Just a taste of that song.
Well, thank you so much, Cid. And
Thank you.
This has been really great, really engaging, and really inspiring. And I believe, I was going to say earlier when you were talking about the music distribution, I believe that the world is completely changing and it's going to be a lot different next year.
Oh God, please.
In the way we move through the world, I can feel it. I think you're poised to, you know, this messaging, the multidimensionality of what you're sharing. And thank you for your heart and your passion and inspiring so many people that are looking for, you know, a beacon of light. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you all. Great to be here, and hope to see Austin sometime next year.
Yeah. Right.
It was
Thanks,
great to
come
meet
by
you.
anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Sid.